Hi there. Today we're going to be reviewing quadrilaterals and how those quadrilaterals are classified or grouped together. Um, and we'll talk about how those groupings are decided upon, how we look at either sides or angles to group quadrilaterals into different categories. When you get to the second slide in the deck, please make sure you type your name and the date. And the third slide is the first task. Here it says to complete the hierarchy by matching the shape to the correct word. You must use each card once. So we talked about a hierarchy last year in Module 5 and Lesson 16 through 18. And remember, quadrilateral just means a two-dimensional shape, a closed shape with four sides. So everything underneath this hierarchy is in fact a quadrilateral. And then we break off into different categories. So if we go over here, a trapezoid, remember a trapezoid is a quadrilateral that has at least one pair of parallel sides. I would argue that trapezoids can also be parallelograms, but not every trapezoid is a parallelogram. So that's why it doesn't fit under here. Kites, we'll review those in a few minutes. Parallelograms have two pair of parallel sides. So remember, trapezoid has at least one. That makes them different. A rectangle falls under the category of parallelogram, as does a rhombus. Remember, rectangles have right angles. Rhombuses do not have right angles, but they do have equal sides. So that makes them a special type of parallelogram. So I think it's always best to start with what we know first, because any one of these shapes down here could be called a quadrilateral. So how do you decide here which shape to put? So I always like to start with something I'm very certain of. So I'm going to put a rectangle there. I'm also pretty certain that this is a rhombus because it's a parallelogram with equal sides. I'm going to move on and place my parallelogram here. Two pair of parallel sides, but they're not equal. So these two fit under parallelogram because they are special types. Let's look at this orange shape here. I see one pair of parallel sides. So I'm going to put that in the trapezoid category, quadrilateral with at least one pair of parallel sides. This is a kite here, and let's talk about what a kite is. We learned that in the Khan Academy video. A kite is a quadrilateral that has two sets of equal sides, but these sides must be adjacent. That means this side and this side must touch each other. So if we look at a parallelogram, this is not a kite because this side is shorter than this side. And this is where they touch. That's that word adjacent. So that's what makes a kite a kite. It's got two equal sides that touch or that are adjacent to one another. They form an angle. Here, when we look at angles, these sides are not equal. So that's a kite. We're going to put this last shape into the quadrilateral box because it's four-sided. It doesn't have equal sides. It's got different types of angles. Four-sided shape. It's a very general quadrilateral. Let's move on to task 2. Task 2, we're taking a look at some shapes. And now we're going to look specifically at the shape's angles. So acute angles, those are those angles that are smaller than 90 degrees. Obtuse angles are larger than 90 degrees, and right angles are 90-degree angles. If we look at this triangle here, I see 3 acute angles. So we're going to put an X only in the acute box. Here we have a trapezoid with a right angle, a second right angle. This has an acute angle right here. And this angle opens up to be greater than 90 degrees. So this shape has all 3 types of angles. So we'll put an X in all 3 categories. And a square is a shape, 4-sided shape, equal sides with 4 right angles. So it only has right angles. So task 2, we were looking at shapes, angles, and in task 3, we're going to be looking at the sides of the shape or the lines that make those shapes. So parallel lines, remember parallel lines will never cross. So there's a pair of parallel lines. Perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines are those lines, this is the symbol for perpendicular, those lines that meet to form right angles. So if I'm looking at this trapezoid here, there are no right angles, but there is one pair of parallel sides. So I'm going to put parallel lines there. Let's take a look at this hexagon. I do not see any right angles. They're all obtuse angles. So no perpendicular sides or lines. Are there sides that are parallel? So if we look carefully here, this side is parallel to this side. This side's parallel to that side. So these opposite sides in this shape are parallel. So I'm going to put an X there for parallel sides. Ooh, it jumped ahead for some reason. And here we have a rectangle. So a rectangle has two pair of parallel sides and it forms right angles. Those sides meet to form right angles. So we're going to put an X in each category. Okay, let's move on to, it's kind of weird how those lines showed up on this slide. So in task 4, you're going to work to sort shapes. And remember, two-dimensional shapes are sorted based on the type of angles they have or how their lines are related. Do they have parallel sides? Do they have perpendicular sides? We have a couple of unique sides here. Let's take a look at this shape right here. So this shape's a little unique. It is a quadrilateral though, because there are 4 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't have any of those special characteristics where we can call it a parallelogram. There's no parallel sides. I don't see any right angles. But is there another shape that we could put in a group along with this shape? Well, if we look at the angles, we have an acute angle here, an acute angle here, an acute angle here. So technically, I can put any shape here that has acute angles, if that's how I'm going to sort them. And then maybe in this category, I'd put shapes that have right angles or obtuse angles. Or maybe you want to sort shapes based on sides. Maybe you want to put parallel sides here or shapes that don't have any parallel sides. So you're going to decide that. And then in task 5, you're going to type a sentence that explains which characteristics you use to sort those shapes in problem 4. And lastly, the 6th task, there's a statement there. You have to decide and you're going to drag a word. Oh, I don't know. I guess you type a word there. I'm not sure. Or maybe this goes. Yeah. Drag that oval up to whichever word you think defines or matches this statement. A parallelogram is always a rectangle. So that's either true or false, and then you're going to explain your thinking down there. Okay, great job.